what has happened over the last several years, which has made a huge difference and created a whole new model of economic growth. I think I'm just waiting for the slides. But essentially, over the last several years, India has transformed in many ways, and this digital transformation is at the heart of economic growth and so on. Now, we know what's happening in the world. The world is getting hotter, 1.5 degrees, Paris, and so on. It's getting older. Demographics are changing. Geopolitics is there in every conversation. But as we noticed in the last 3 days, India is a young, democratic nation with immense potential and expected to be among the leading economies of the world. But actually, when you look below the hood, it's not one big market, or it was not one big market. It had huge variations in cultures, markets, regulations, industrialization. Every state had its own tax system and so on. But what has now happened is all these things have come together to create one mega economy, which brings everything together and leads to immense productivity. So what is fundamentally happening is India is going from an offline, informal, low productivity, multiple set of microeconomies to a single, online, formal, high productivity mega economy. And this is the trend of the next 20 years. And you're going to see all this happening every year, year by year. And this has been enabled by a new approach to solving society's issues, which we call as digital public infrastructure. In other words, it's essentially extending the ability of a country to use digital technology at population scale to transform society. And digital public infrastructure has a number of building blocks. Each block does one thing well, but all the blocks talk to each other, they interoperate, and when these blocks come together, they create all kinds of solutions at population scale. Now, it began with the ID system called Aadhaar, which I was in charge of for 5 years, and the idea was to give a digital ID to every Indian. And today, 1.3 billion Indians have this digital ID. It provides, thank you. It provides for online authentication of identity using your fingerprint, iris, OTP, face, whatever. And that system does 80 million transactions a day, which means 80 million times some Indian is using his Aadhaar to do an online verification. Now, this online verification, the second thing built on this was what's called as KYC, or Know Your Customer. And KYC was then made a requirement. Aadhaar KYC was sufficient to open a bank account or to get a mobile connection. What are the tools of the new world? Everybody should have a digital ID. Everybody should have a bank account. Everybody should have a smartphone.
Okay.
Then anything can be done. Everything else is built on that.
Because we were talking about this before we came onto the panel. The three basic things: a smartphone, a bank account, and a digital ID.
Yes.
That's where every nation.
In India, it's been named by the Prime Minister the Jam Trinity: Jan Dhan, which is the bank account, Aadhaar, the ID, and mobile.
That shouldn't cost that much.
No, nothing. Peanuts.
Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai. All praises, all honor, all glory be unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakakudash. Double honors to our apostles and our elders at Great Millstone that are teaching the truth through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai, and who are ruling well through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. Shalom, peace and love to you, Akim, that are prophets and teachers who hazard your lives, risking your lives and freedom to push the true wisdom, knowledge, and understanding and breakdowns of the scriptures to help edify the elect of the nation of Israel, which consists of the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans in North, Central, South America, and to the Israelite foreigners that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. Shalom, peace and love be unto you believers, you Akim, you Akwathium, and children, are you brothers and sisters, are you children that are listening and learning. This lesson is inspired by an article, which I think is a very good article that I came across that's dealing with the G20, which the G20 stands for Group 20. All right, and it's a group of actually 19 countries that basically make up 85% of the world's gross domestic product and about 75% of the world's trade. So automatically, right there, we know that we're dealing with transactions. All right, we're dealing with economies. We're dealing with money. All right. However, the G20 was founded. All right. I want to say going back to 1999, if I'm not mistaken. All right, dealing with the Asian financial crisis. All right, as a forum for the finance ministers and the central bank governors to discuss global economic and financial issues. And I just want to let you know, all right, that within this particular article, they're not talking about philosophy. They're not talking about white women, dating white women. They're not talking about Christianity. All right, they're not talking about any of those things that these other camps will label as the mark of the beast. They're not talking about a spiritual mark. All right, but they're speaking about the infrastructure that is being laid for something that is known as the digital DI. Now flip those two letters around, all right, and you'll get the acronym ID, which is short for identification, which is laying the infrastructure for the MOTB and the RFID CHIP. Now, this particular year, all right, the presidency or the seat of presidency is held by India, and there's an individual whose name is what is his name? Give me 2 seconds and I'll tell you his name. His name is Nandan Nilekani. Now, if that name sounds familiar, this is the same individual that was speaking to the International Monetary Fund. And he said that the digital public infrastructure, dealing with that, there are 3 tools of the New World. Speaking about the New World Order. This is what he said, quote, "If you think, what are the tools of the New World? Everybody should have a digital DI. Everybody should have a bank account. Everybody should have a smartphone. Then anything could be done. Everything else is built on that." And I reported on this before. All right, it's in the video, which I said that the smartphone will become the MOTB, which is the RFID CHIP and the brain CHIP. All the technology that's inside the smartphone will be inside the CHIP and the brain CHIP, which you have Danya Allah, which mentioned, actually he has the movie called Karagma. But however, when it comes down to their teaching of what the MOTB is, they're ambiguous. All right, there's too much ambiguity. They don't come out and say exactly what it is. All right, they make it seem as if it's open to many other things, when it's just simply, it's just that is the MOTB is the RFID CHIP. What's so hard about saying that? And then you got Captain Tazariak and many others, all right, who have their interpretation of what the MOTB is, and it's not accurate according to biblical prophecy. So once again, at these G20 summits, they're not talking about philosophy in the regard of what these other Israelite groups will make you think that the MOTB will be. They're not speaking about Christianity. They're not speaking about anything spiritual. They're speaking about something physical, okay? And this particular individual, whose name is once again, his name is Nandan Nilekani. For 5 years, he ran something that is known as Aadhaar, and it's a biometric system that is now used by 1.3 billion Indians within India. So damn near everybody in that country goes through this system, which is known as Aadhaar. And it's a biometric system that measures the fingerprint, it measures the retina of the eye, and it also measures the facial recognition. Now, through that is something that is known as KYC, which is Know Your Customer. You can't even open up a bank account in India, all right, without using your biometrics. You can't even get a cell phone in India without using your biometrics. So what's the next step? Because according to financial experts, this is the best biometric system that's out there. And many other nations are going to use this. Now, I want to go to something that this individual said, because there's something called the DPI, which is called the Digital Public Infrastructure. All right. This is the Digital Public Infrastructure. So the same dude that I mentioned earlier, all right, with the funny Indian name, all right, Nandan Naukani, mentioned this. He said this. He said, India is a young democratic nation with immense potential and expected to be among the leading economies of the world. But actually, when you look below the hood, it is one big market, or it was not one big market. It had huge variations in cultures, market regulations, and industrialization. So basically, what he's saying is that India at one point was broken up. All right, it wasn't the country that you now know it to be today. All right. Once again, he said that there was variations, all right, in cultures. You got multiple different cultures within India. You got multiple different markets, multiple different regulations, and also industrialization. Every state had its own tax system and so on. But what has now happened is all these things have come together to create one mega economy, because this is what they're trying to do with the world. All right. This is what they're trying to do all over the world. You got variations in cultures. You got variations in markets. You got variations within regulations, industrialization. All right. You have macro economies throughout the whole world, but they want it to be one mega economy. Hence the New World Order. All right. Hence the think tank of the elites, which is the World Economic Forum, and the agendas that they're pushing is all to create one central bank. All right. One central bank digital currency, or one central bank digital system, the MOTB system. Reading on, it says, but actually, when you look below the hood, it's not one big market, or it was not one big market. It had huge variations in cultures, markets, regulations, industrializations. Every state had its own tax system and so on. But what has now happened is all these things have come together to create one mega economy, which brings everything together and leads to immense productivity. So what is fundamentally happening in India is going from an offline, informal, low productivity, multiple set of micro economies to a single online, formal, high productivity mega economy. And this is the trend of the next 20 years. And you're going to see all this happening every year, year by year. And this has been enabled by a new approach to solving society's issues, which we call a digital public infrastructure. In other words, it's essentially extending the ability of a country to use digital technology at population scale to transform society and digital public infrastructure has a number of building blocks. Each block does one thing well, but all the blocks talk to each other. They interpret, and when these blocks come together, they create all kinds of solutions at population scale. Now it began with the ID system called Aadhaar, which was in charge of, which I was in charge of 5 years. And when Salaki, and the idea was to give a digital ID to every Indian. And today, 1.3 Indians have this digital ID. It provides for online authentication of identity using your fingerprint, iris, face, OTP, face, and that system does 80 million transactions a day, which means 80 million times some Indians is using his Aadhaar to do an online verification. Now, this online verification, the second thing built on this was, what's called a KYC, or know your customer. And KYC was then made a requirement. Other KYC was sufficient to open a bank account or to get a mobile connection in 2015. So this is how this system is going to work. All right, but instead of being just simply biometric, retina scans, fingerprint scans, or facial scans, it's going to go far beyond that, to the point where you're not able to make any transaction unless you willingly consent and voluntarily receive the RFID CHIP and the brain CHIP. So this is paving the way for that. Now, once again, these G20 summits consist of multiple different nations. These are the nations that are driving the world's economy. All right, it says right here from the G20.org, it says the Group 20 or G20 comprises 19 countries: Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Republic of Korea, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and the European Union. The G20 members represent around 85% of the global GDP, which is a gross domestic product, over 75% of the global trade, and about 2/3 of the world's population. Now, reading this, it says in 2008, elevation to leader levels, the G20 was upgraded to the level of heads of state, governments, in the wake of the global economic and financial crisis of 2007, and in 2009 was designated the premier forum for international economic cooperation. The G20 summit is held annually under the leadership of a rotating presidency. So right now, the presidency falls under India. And that's the reason why you have this individual from India, which is speaking concerning the digital public infrastructure. The G20 initial focus largely on broad macroeconomic issues. So these are small economies, around the world. But it has since expanded its agenda to inter alia included trade. So, wow, included trade, sustainable development, health, agriculture, energy, environment, climate change, anti-corruption. The G20 presidency is responsible for bringing together G20 agenda in consultation with other members and is in response to developments in the global economy. So we're dealing with the global economy. We're dealing with money. We're dealing with trade. So eventually, all right, and the whole reason of them speaking about this at the G20 amongst these 19 different nations and the rest of the nations that are invitees is to push this agenda on the world. all right, which will eventually use the same DI system, all right, to bring all of the economies of the world together. All right, we're seeing the push for the world to be one world order. All right, when it comes down to all of these other nations, although the faces of these people may be people that are from those particular regions, really the elites of the world are behind this. All right, the book of 2nd Ezra 15:46, and thou, Asia, thou art partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person. Woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredoms, that they might please the glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. All right, a lot of these nations around the world, all right, they have the same agenda as the rich elite bankers of the world. All right, so within Asia Minor, within Asia Major, all over Asia and around the world, they're going to push these same platforms or infrastructures. All right, laying the infrastructure for the MOTB system, all right, in the brain CHIP system, all right, the RFID and the brain CHIP system, in which circumstances will become deplorable for people. They'll become desperate. And a lot of people will volunteer and consent to receive the MOTB, which is the RFID CHIP and the brain CHIP. All right, it's going to go far beyond which is known as the Aadhaar system. All right, or what is it? What is the acronym of Aadhaar? Or another name for it is a UID-AI, which is a unique identity number. All right, which is in India. All right, unique identification authority of India. All right, this is something that they're trying to push all around the world. Aadhaar is the world's largest biometric ID system. World Bank chief economist Paul Romer describes Aadhaar as the most sophisticated ID program in the world. All right, and because of this program, in India, you can't even do anything online in regards of opening up a bank account or buying a cell phone without having this particular system. So imagine anywhere around the world, all right, not being able to make a transaction without being or having a digital identity. You know, and eventually all of this is going under the skin, as was said by Klaus Schwab from the WEF. All right, people won't be able to make transactions outside of this system. People won't be able to buy and sell outside of this system. People won't be able to do any fraud or make money under the table, have any side hustles. All right, do tax fraud, evade income taxes. Every single transaction is going to be on a digital ledger. Every single thing that you do, all right, if you are one of the ones that voluntarily consent and receive the RFID CHIP and the brain CHIP, all right, everything that you do is going to be recorded. The book of Revelation 3:10, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. So this system is going to be pushed everywhere. All right, notice that the nations that are amongst the G20 are the ones that are leading the world's economy. They have the leading economies. They make up of 85% of the world's GDP and 75% of trade. All of those nations, including more, is going to be on that system. They're going to push that system worldwide. All right, and everyone that consent and receive the RFID CHIP and the brain CHIP, because this is just the beginning phases of it. I guarantee you that eventually it's going to go beyond just simple biometrics, and it's going to go into them wanting to put things under the skin. This is just the beginning of it. All right, they got the noose around the neck All right, once they get you to voluntarily put your head inside of it, but then they're going to tighten the rope. All right, I guarantee you it's going to get deeper than that. You know, no pun intended. All right, eventually they're going to want to get deep up under that dermal, up under that skin, and put a C-hip inside of it. And for everybody that take it, all right, remember the scripture says you can't hide it. The scripture says that there's going to be a grievous sword that comes upon them that receive it. So everybody that receive it, eventually you're going to be destroyed for receiving it. But everyone that's part of the elect that doesn't receive it, they're going to be rewarded. So with that, I truly hope that this lesson was edifying. All praises, honor, and glory be unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, double honors to our apostles and our elders at Great Millstone. Peace and love, say, taste and mercy be unto the hopeful elect. Shalom and the Baba Bar. Kwam Bakiyam. Shalom.